girl Olivia. I'm here with the Black Nanny Network, and I wanted to do this video for any nanny that feels like she's stuck in her career. Like you could feel like you're at a certain pay grade where you can't go above it, or you feel like you're dealing with a certain type of family and you just can't seem to break through to that next level. Maybe you're working really hard and you have a side hustle. A little background about me. I was a nanny for 11 years, maybe 12 years, 11 and a half years, somewhere in there. I started off by babysitting in high school and I went to fashion school, but before I graduated, I got a fashion job and the people just treated me terribly. I got a lot of experience. I worked at an online store. So I was doing like wardrobe styling for online store. On the side, I was assisting reputable stylists trying to get some experience. So I was like going to all the stylists. I remember at one point I wrote the same email to 100 stylists in LA asking them if I could assist them, and one wrote me back. Her name was Angela Davis, and she wrote me back and she said I could assist her. So from there I was able to work on music videos for celebrities and like Lil Wayne and Enrique Iglesias and Pitbull, and just to name a few. And it was really cool and it was exciting, but I realized that there's such a power in knowing what you personally like regardless of public opinion. And that's something that's very important for my melanated nannies, because there's a misconception that people who are in childcare, are just babysitters, or we don't enjoy our life, or we don't enjoy the fruits of what we do. And I remember the first job, I actually took a nanny job. It was called College Nannies and Tutors. My roommate at the time was like, girl, you should just babysit on the side, get some extra money because you don't like your job. And at that point, I was working at a fashion job, and I said, you know what? I don't like the leadership. I don't like how people are treating me. I was bullied on the job. I remember we had a company dinner and I showed up, and the stylist that I was assisting, not Angela, but the stylist at the job that I had, they had seating based upon the department, and I sat with my department, and she said, oh, someone's sitting here. And she gave me one of those like those looks. And I remember I sat at the table across from them until everyone showed up, and I was just like, that day I decided to quit. I was like, I will never work anywhere where I'm disrespected. I will never put myself in a situation willingly. I don't care for who or for what. And so that was kind of my energy that I took into nannying. So when I signed up for College Nannies and Tutors, it was strictly just to see, I guess, kind of gave me that feeling of like, you know what, I can make some money on the side, just like high school. I can start my own business. I can do wardrobe styling, but like more freelance for music videos and commercials. And that's what I did. And the first job that I had was a celebrity kid. And it was an NDA, so I can't say who it was, but she was definitely on television, and I got to meet so many celebrities. And I was only making 15 an hour because it was through an agency that was like more of like a, after school type of agency. It wasn't like, hey, you want to live in? It was nothing like that. And I remember from that experience, I got to go to Disneyland. I got to cut the line and go on like several times, and I got to stay in resorts, and I got to spend the night at a really, really nice house. And I remember I never looked at my nanny career as something that was outside of me. I never looked at my nanny career as like, I wasn't good enough, or these people have this, and I just said, you know what, I'm experiencing it and I'm getting paid to have nice experiences. And so from there, I just liked it a little bit more and a little bit more. And I remember I had got to this point where I was growing, and then I hit this cap, and it was $25 an hour. I was at this cap, and I was like, man, all the jobs are $25 an hour. And I wanted to live by myself in Los Angeles. And for anybody who knows LA, you got to make some money to be able to live on your own. And I remember at work, I would pretend that my boss's house was my house. I would keep it clean like it was my house. I would take care of the kids like they were my kids. And I didn't play that. And they called me Rah Rah because my first name is Sarah, but I go by my middle name Olivia now, but they would be like, Sarah. So they would call me Rah Rah. And I got to meet some of the most phenomenal people. that happened to be actresses. Some of them were doctors, some of them, they all had different professions, but they all were wealthy. They all had this level of just that they were there, whether they were producers or actors or soap stars. And I got to work for some amazing people. And I didn't realize that I was practicing the law of assumption. And the law of assumption is saying that instead of looking outside of yourself for success, for love, for validation, for money, it's to perceive yourself as the value, the person experiencing it. So what I did was I would just embody it and I would just make believe in my head. And I remember I met this nanny. She was Black and she worked for a very nice agency that like paid a lot. And I just, in my head, I was like, I can't make that much as her. And I don't even know why I thought that, but she was Black like me. She was watching a kid the same age as me. And she was doing all the things I was doing, but she was making six figures and I wasn't even on salary. I was just making, $25 an hour. And I remember at one point in my life, I would have loved to make $25 an hour. It was a dream of mine because, like I said, when I started nannying, I was making about $12.50 an hour, and then it went up to 15. And I realized that my money always increased when my self-worth increased. So I said, you know what? I'm going to submerge myself. I'm going to surround myself with nannies that are high ticket nannies, high profile nannies, that have NDAs. I already was used to having a non-disclosure because I was working for a child actress, but because I was working part-time, I didn't make as much as I wanted to make. And so I remember I surrounded myself with high-end nannies. I asked them questions, and I remember I spent about 2 months brainwashing myself all the time. I would listen to content about making more money. I would listen to affirmations. I started listening to Les Brown. I started listening to Eric Thomas. And the crazy thing was I actually manifested free tickets to meet Eric Thomas. He's a motivational speaker. They call him the hip hop preacher. And he had a book. I bought the book. And I remember my ex at the time, I was visiting him in Phoenix and he said, hey, Eric Thomas is here. And I started to notice that my life became a lot more magical. I started having encounters, and this had already happened in my life, but I didn't know how to do it on purpose. And I kept meeting celebrities everywhere I went. And I just said, once you live as a nanny, and like for those of you that maybe who are nannies who haven't had those high profile experiences, it's definitely a choice. And I want you to realize that the client, the family, and the status of the family, regardless of what they do, the fact that they pay you can sometimes make you feel like you have a less self-worth, especially if you're considering like, hey, I'm Black, or hey, I'm this, or hey, I'm whatever it is, or I'm old, or maybe I'm not bilingual. Or don't allow the negative narratives about the industry to get to you. And definitely do not put a celebrity and do not put high-paying families on a pedestal. I want you to just consciously think about all of the things that you feel about nannying and making more money or having a better experience. I want you to take it off of a pedestal, and I want you to look at yourself, and I want you to feed yourself that value every day. So when you're driving to work, what I did was I would listen to Les Brown, I would listen to Tony Robbins, I would listen to Jim Rohn, and I would just feed my spirit. I didn't know at the time that, so going back to the story, 2 months, I dedicated 2 months, I started chanting, and I really got into like Indian culture and Lakshmi and Ganesha and all of the my spiritual journey just took me on that path. It's not that it needs to be your path, it's just my particular path. And so I started going to the Lakeview Shrine in Malibu in LA, and I would go meditate because I was so frustrated at my job. And I remember feeling like, damn, I'll never be like one of those nannies that like could really excel and travel and do things. And it wasn't just about being a nanny. It was like I didn't believe in myself and I didn't know why. And so what I know now that I didn't know was that believing in myself is a conscious choice, and it's a conscious action that I have to do several times a day and be consistent at it. So then was the earlier journey. So I would go meditate and I would go I started chanting because it brought me so much peace. And I started having relationship issues at the time with the guy that I was in love. I was in love with the wrong man. I was in love with the wrong man. And it was consuming. So I realized that when you have all these distractions, especially if you're a caretaker, it just makes the mountain seem so much bigger. But, anyways, long story short, I decided to open up my mind to the possibilities because I already wasn't making what I wanted. And I told my existing boss, like, hey, I'm going to leave when the kid goes to school, or could you pay me the same amount that I'm making with less hours because you're already paying it? And they weren't willing to do that. And I remember feeling like this this anger, this anxiety that just came over me. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm giving everything and it's not valued how I want it to be. And even though it was nothing against that family, it was nothing against anything like that. It was just a wake up call for myself personally to think of myself as the main character, to think for myself um, because it was really, really hurtful. And I don't know if, like, any parent, if you're watching this and you're a parent or you're a nanny, one of the hardest feelings for a caretaker is to feel that their job could be on the line every fucking day. It could also feel like their self-worth is being compared and judged, and it's just not a good feeling. And so I remember that one of the first things that happened was I surrounded myself. I started, spending that time meditating and chanting, and just I went ghost mode. You weren't gonna hear from me because I was like, I'm changing my life. Like, I'm already knee deep. If you're already like in a situation that you want to escape, you got to go all in. You got to jump in the pool, and you can't be worried about Instagram and texting. And so I kind of self-isolated for 2 months, and I wrote down that I wanted to make, I think it was $67,000. I was like, I want to make $67,000. And at the time I was making 25 an hour at like 40 hours a week or something like that. And I just was like, I wrote the number down, and then I had a family through a contact hit me up and say, hey, and they were a wealthy family. When I tell you, this family traveled the world, y'all. They were like jet setting. They had 2 kids. And actually, it was the grandparents that I knew of another family. And I remember thinking, they were like, well, what's your price? And I said, you know what? I want 67 a year. And I said, I didn't even seek them out. So let me say that because I didn't want to go through an agency. And she said, oh, I was thinking something a little lower. Actually, no, what happened was she never even contacted me back. And I remember feeling heartbroken, like, man, like, you didn't even hit me back. Like, we can't even negotiate. And so I just went back into my tunnel, and I surrounded myself. I was doing play dates with high-end nannies. I was seeking them out. I was going on Facebook groups, and I was just trying to surround myself with nannies who made more, because there was definitely a difference in psychology. What was it so different about them that they were able to make this much? What was so different about their journey? And I remember I was very fortunate to find a Black nanny who was making a lot of money, and she invited me to like hang out with her circle. And these women were making over 6 figures, and they were doing all this stuff, and their bosses were like paying for their weddings, and their bosses were doing anything to make sure they were happy. And right then I said, you know what? I'm going to do everything to make sure that I'm happy, and I'm going to attract a family to do the same. And one day, I was I was in my hole, and my brother called me, and he was like, look, there's a pool party. Take a break from trying to manifest this job. Take a break from all the stuff you're doing and come out and have a good time. And I was like, absolutely not. And I do realize that as a Taurus, sometimes I'd be like, no, but I did it. And I went to the pool party, and I remember I was sitting there on the couch, and the celebrity came on the TV. I can't say who they are because I signed an NDA. But I saw the person on the TV, and they were talking about this celebrity having kids now. And I was like, I wonder who nannies for them. And I really thought about it. It was nothing. It was just like, oh, I wonder who nannies for them. We went downstairs to the pool at the pool party because we were upstairs, and like the TV was on, and it was like some show was on, and they were talking about their new kid. And when I went downstairs, when you're a nanny, you hit up all your nanny friends looking for jobs. And so I had lots of texts coming in about different positions, but they weren't quite what I wanted. And they were just like, text this girl and do this. And I said, I'm an agency girl. I'm an agency nanny. That was just my personal preference because you're going to work hard to find me the perfect family. I'm not chasing families. I'm not doing this. And so when I went downstairs to the pool, less than 10 minutes later, that same celebrity that was on TV, someone had said, "Hey, did you hear that so and so, that celebrity was hiring?" And I was like, there's no way. This is like, what? And it's funny. Sometimes you can feel like you're so hyper focused on trying to make shit happen, you forget about the fabric of the universe. And I didn't realize that I was the magnet, that how I felt about myself was the magnet, and where I was in my life was a reflection of my mental picture of myself, and that you cannot outwork your mentality. You cannot outwork your mentality. You cannot outwork cynicism, and you cannot outwork a low self-esteem. And so when that happened, I hit up the girl who texted me and I said, "Wow, this is a sign from the universe." And then I never heard anything. I think a couple days went by and they said, "Oh, my roommate wanted that job. She's a nanny. And I'm sorry, like, you know." And it was one of those word of mouth things. It wasn't through an agency. And I said, "You know what? I'm just going to hit up a heavy hitter agency and put together my best portfolio, put together my best letters of recommendation, and take the value that I already have as a nanny and still doing my routines, listening to my stuff, listening to my audiobooks, and increasing my self-worth." And I had an interview at this agency, and when I went to the agency in LA, I remember my hair was pink, my nails were long, and I had, I think, nose rings, and I just was completely myself. I said, I'm not doing all this like wearing smocks, and like, of course I'm not gonna have my cleavage, I'm gonna be respectful, but I'm still gonna be me because I'm important and I'm the value and I'm who they need. And so when I went there, I said, I don't want to live in, I don't want to do this. I had all of these like, no, it has to come this way, it has to be this much, it has to be. And so the beautiful thing about knowing what you want, it can get you there. It can get you there. But what I learned is that to keep you there, you have to be open. So they told me about the positions. They loved me. They were like, where have you been? You're this great nanny. And I was just like, you know, and the treatment was different at these higher end nannies. I got a different type of treatment. I felt like the celebrity, not the other way around. I felt like the focus. And so right before I left, one of the women stuck her head in and she said, "Hey, did you hear that blank celebrity is hiring?" And it was the same girl from the TV. And when I found that out, I said, I don't have to force it to happen. What is meant for me will not miss me when I know what I want and who I am, and I have integrity. So I remember that day they said she was going to hire 2 nannies, and she had already hired 1 nanny, and she had already like finished her interviews. So I'm like, in my head, the old me would have been like, it's not worth it. And so that voice that pops up that dismisses everything you're working for, I want to normalize that is not you. That's the false self. Anything that speaks against your potential is not you. That is the false self. And I had to learn to separate that mental thought from who I actually am. And so I ended up being able to go on a interview as the last person, I believe, or one of the last people after this person had already interviewed lots of nannies. And when I got there, I got this feeling in my chest like, this is my job. I showed up to the house. I remember I was outside in the car, like I was sweating, my hands were sweating. I was listening to my affirmations, and she had this, like, when you work for a high-end family, it's completely different dynamic. It is a machine. There is housekeepers, there is night nurses, there are multiple nannies, there are assistants, there's hair and makeup, there's people. It's not just a house. And I just remember feeling like, now I feel like I have a nanny career. I didn't just feel like a nanny with no help and no assistant. I felt like that bitch. I felt purposeful and I felt empowered. And so I did the interview, and before the end of the day, the job was mine. It was mine. And it's like, I just wanted to say this video for the Black Nanny Network. It's kind of long, but I had to because I've never officially done it. And I just want you to know that I'm going to do a part 2, but I just want you to know that, like, our dreams, we play a role in the operation of our dreams coming to fruition. And it's a daily practice of not searching for jobs. It's a daily practice of believing in ourselves. So if you're watching this, I just want you to say it out loud. I believe in myself. I believe in myself. I believe in my wealth, and I believe in myself. And that's how I became a 6-figure nanny.